Our son Luke told me that he had died and been reborn again. And he said it was a fire.
We just jumped out.
She said, I'm going to draw you my other mother. Your other mother. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody tried to abduct my daughter.
I knew that because someone sees something doesn't mean they understand what's happening.
I could tell that he was disturbed by something.
She was withdrawn. She was angry.
I was at a loss.
She said, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy.
He was just staring in complete disbelief, too. I started feeling sick to my stomach.
I was definitely concerned, didn't know what to think.
What I found was heartbreaking. Cincinnati is a great place to raise a family. It's in the heart of the Midwest. I think there's about 300,000 people.
My wife and I met in high school. We went to high school together, and then we went to the University of Cincinnati together. We started a family here in Cincinnati, not too far away from where we both grew up.
My husband, Nick, and I are pretty open-minded people, but nothing really prepared us for exactly what happened with our whole experience with Luke. When I had Luke, it felt like something that I had been missing forever was now in my life.
A firstborn grandchild. The day he was put into my arms was a gift. I looked into his eyes, looked like Erica. The moment I looked at him, we bonded. It was an incredible moment.
Nick was above and beyond excited to have a boy.
Luke is a smart kid. He is very vocal.
Okay, drum roll, please.
He was very, very early in all of his development. He was an early talker. Luke always had a cautionary side to him that we couldn't explain. Most children, you know, they have to learn that the stove is hot from either getting yelled at or touching it and burning themselves. But it's like Luke already knew all those things.
Even I am shocked at things that he says.
The first thing that he would say to me that would make me turn around and question what he was talking about is he would say, before I was a baby, I had black hair. And I was like, what are you talking about? You know, you were bald until you were 2, and now you have blonde hair. You never had black hair. One day I was getting dressed and put earrings on, and he reached up and touched my earring and said, oh, I used to have a pair like that when I was a girl. I remember thinking, okay, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, he's just used to me getting dressed and ready in the morning and sees me putting earrings on, and he wants to relate. After correcting him so many times and explaining to him that he was born a boy and that he was never a girl, he would still kind of bring things up, just matter-of-factly, like, oh, well, when I was a girl, I did that. And, you know, when a 2-year-old says something like that, you just kind of blow it off. You don't really think anything of it at first. We were sitting outside, and we had found a few ladybugs. And I showed him, you know, Luke, look, this is a ladybug. Isn't it cute? I said, well, what should we name the ladybug? And he said, Pam. And I just remember laughing, because I'm like, Pam, where in the heck did he get that? He doesn't know any Pams. There's no Pams on any of the TV shows that he watches. I started making mental notes of it just because it started to be a little disturbing.
And next thing you know, it happened again. We heard Luke call one of his little stuffed animals Pam.
In fact, anytime we named anything, if it was a girl, it would be Pam.
Why is he saying Pam? Where's that coming from?
When Luke was 3, it was Valentine's Day, and we were hanging little Valentine's Day decorations in the window. They were little owls that were red and pink. I asked him what we should name one of the owls, and he said Pam. I kind of like had like that moment where I was like, I want to know why it's always Pam. Who's Pam? And he looks right at me and he says, I was. Well, I used to be, and then I died. And I went up to heaven, and God pushed me back down. And when I woke up, I was a baby, and you named me Luke.
husband, Bill, and my daughter, Willa, and I live in Indiana, Pennsylvania. It's a small town in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's part of Appalachia. It's a coal town. It has a university, though, so it's a little bit larger than some of the smaller towns around us.
I'm Bill, and I'm Willa's father. When Willa was born, I was absolutely ecstatic. She was our first, and she's our only.
We had moved from Rochester, New York, when I took a position at the university. Nothing very unusual happened with Willa until she was about 2 or 3 years old. I took her to the local park. Lots of kids playing, lots of people around. It's a late spring day. I was just sitting not too far from her, watching her, and she was standing looking at a tree. It was a fairly good-sized tree, and there was a limb that came sort of out from the side where somebody could reasonably be sitting. And then I could see that she was talking to the tree. And my first thought was, isn't that sweet? She loves the tree. She's talking to trees. When we got back from the park, she was drawing with chalk in the driveway, and she said, I'm going to draw you my other mother. And I said, your other mother? She said, yes, my other mother. She was in the park. At first I thought, oh my gosh, somehow, at some point, somebody tried to abduct my daughter. Somebody tried to tell her that they were her mother and take her away. I didn't want to frighten her, and I said, well, tell me about your other mother. And she said, well, she was up in the tree. I said, why was she in the tree? And she said, well, she only had one leg. She was bit by a snake, and a bad doctor tried to save her, and he cut off her leg, but she still died anyway. And she said, get me down, help me down. And I told her, can't you see I'm little now? I can't help you down. And she told this woman, her other mother, she said, I have to go now. I have a new mother. And she walked away. When I realized that Willa was actually talking about another mother that she had had, I was shocked. I thought, I don't know what's happening.
Willa never mentioned her other mother to me directly. Her mother was the one that she would talk to in more personal ways. I think it could be because I'm basically skeptical of just about everything. And I think Willa sensed that my reaction would be different from Laurel's. I would be more, not sure about that, sweetheart. Let's think this through.
I know that she has seen something from the look on her face. If I can't hear what she's hearing, I can't help her. And it's very frustrating, and it hurts.
I knew that because someone sees something doesn't mean they understand what's happening. Still, I would come to question everything.
I took our daughter Willa to the local park, and she was standing looking at a tree. And then I could see that she was talking to the tree. When we got back from the park, she was drawing with chalk in the driveway, and she said, I'm going to draw you my other mother. And I said, your other mother? She said, yes, my other mother. She was in the park. I thought, I don't know what's happening. One day when Willa was about 4 or 5 years old, we're driving to school. She's sitting in the back seat in her child's seat, and I'm blabbing to her about her sandwiches and her lunchbox. She's looking out the window, and all of a sudden, she turns to look at me. And I can see her in the rearview mirror, and she just looks different. She's still the same child, but her face looks older. And she says, completely out of the blue, Mother, you must regain the gifts you've been given. She doesn't normally call me mother. At the time, Willa called me Mama and my husband Papa. But the word mother never came out of her mouth except in these instances where she seemed to be somebody quite different. And she looks back out the window, and I said, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And she looks back at me, and she says, what? as if that came from nowhere. She has no idea that this is what she has just said to me. And she didn't seem to recall that in any way. Because I didn't know what to say. I was just sort of stunned.
She would say things that was just totally out of character with Willa.
You must regain the gifts you've been given.
I don't know that I was ever worried, anything can happen with a kid.
First, I was concerned about the whole shift. I can't call it physical. I mean, it's the same face, but something in the whole personality and the way that she was speaking, mother, and the seriousness of this. I did believe that Willa was sending me a message because there was an awful lot going on. When she was 2, I was diagnosed with cancer. The treatment took approximately a year between rounds of chemotherapy, surgery, and weeks of radiation. I was just completely tensed up, as if I have no control over my life, when in fact I really do. They caught the cancer early. It had not spread, so I was okay. The message really helped me, but I was curious. I was a little unnerved. I'm not going to say that I thought that she was crazy. I just felt like there were things going on that I did not understand. I linked this with the story that she told me about her other mother, and it became increasingly more frightening to me to think about all of this happening right there in front of me. It makes you wonder what is going on with my daughter.
When Laurel would explain to me what Willa had done or what Willa had said, I just wasn't sure what to make of it. Just because this is what you perceive to be going on, is it?
Nothing very unusual happened for a long time. And then when Willa got older, she came to my husband and I and told us that she was seeing things. I would hear Willa move from her bedroom to maybe use the bathroom at night and hear her say, "Stop it!" She told me that these 2 little girls, literally, who were ghosts, were actually playing, going boo. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, this is a very, very frightening thing for a parent to have to face. I didn't know what I could do to help her.
Our son Luke started communicating at a very young age, but when he first started saying that he was a woman named Pam, we didn't really know what to think. It was Valentine's Day, and we were hanging decorations. I asked him what we should name one of the owls. And he said, Pam. Who's Pam? And he looks right at me and he says, I was. And then I died. And I went up to heaven, God pushed me back down, and when I woke up, I was a baby, and you named me Luke. He was just staring over, like, in complete disbelief, too.
I was definitely concerned, didn't know what to think. That's the fact. I mean, that's what he said.
First of all, I was floored by the fact that he even knew what death was.
This is a family that hasn't really introduced religion, formal religion, to these children.
I called my mom and I said, hey, you're not gonna believe what just happened. Luke just said,
Pam was me once. Really. God threw me back down and my new mom named me Luke.
This was the most incredible thing that came out of his mouth, as far as I'm concerned. Here was a child who, 1, had no insight as to what death was even about, and 2, had no insight of heaven or God.
She's the first one that said, maybe it's like a reincarnation sort of thing, or maybe it's a past life. And I was kind of at first like, Mom, don't go there with me.
Erica and Nick like to approach things from a scientific end. They really weren't all of that open to the past life experience. It's very hard for them to wrap their mind around things unless we can back it up with scientific fact.
I don't really know what I feel about reincarnation. I guess I'm kind of still indifferent on reincarnation.
I really didn't do anything about it. For almost a year, I quit asking him questions. I quit bringing it up around him. I didn't want to put an idea in his head that wasn't already there. So I was cautious to even bring it up.
After that, I didn't really want to ask him about it anymore because he kind of seemed like he didn't want to talk about it, so I wasn't going to talk about it.
Luke was 4, and we were watching TV, and it was something about a bombing, and a picture came up with a building, and it had a hole blown in the side. And Luke said, I don't want to watch this anymore. I don't want to watch it anymore. This is scaring me. And I said, okay, I mean, we don't have to watch it, but it's okay. You know, all the people that are on the show are alive, like it's not real. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, but I died. And I don't like to think about it, it makes me sad. I said, do you remember how you died? And he said, yeah, it was a fire. Well, my first reaction was, are you sure you're not saying that just because you saw that on TV and you're trying to, you know, make something up or play a game with me? And he looked at me really seriously and he said, no, Mom, that building was blown up. It had a hole in the side. It wasn't like that at all. It was a fire. He's like, it was a big building like that, but it didn't get blown up, it burned down. And at the time, he kind of made a hand motion that went like this, and he balled up his fist, and then made a motion like he was jumping out or off of the building.
The building, it's really tall. We just opened the window, then jumped out.
I started thinking that maybe it did have something to do with reincarnation. It really disturbed me to the point where I couldn't let it go. Our 4-year-old son, Luke, was convinced that he used to be a woman named Pam who died in a fire. At that time, was a little shocked at how adamant he was and how descriptive he was.
We just opened the window, then jumped out.
I am not really sure, even after all of this, what I believe. I would say now, after this whole experience, I'm leaning more towards believing that it could be a reincarnation, but it's still really, really mind-blowing to me. Even with everything, I still don't know. So I said, well, do you remember where it was? And he said, Chicago. How do you know that? Where did you get that? And I was like, are you sure? And he was like, I'm sure, Mom, I'm sure. My brain's working really well right now. I know it's Chicago. I had asked him if he remembered ever driving a car or driving anywhere, and he told me no. I didn't really take cars. And I was like, well, how do you get around? Well, I would just mostly walk, and then you could see him think about it for a minute. Sometimes take a train or a bus. So remembering that and then putting that with Chicago made me think, okay, maybe there's some truth to this.
I've never doubted Luke. He was actually telling us something that he really wasn't able to comprehend himself.
I thought to myself, I have a name, Pam. I have the city, Chicago. And I have a means of death, which is by fire. So I figured, you know, Chicago's a big city. If there was a fire somewhat recently where somebody named Pam died, I'd be able to find some record of it. So I sat down and I started doing some research on the internet. As I kept finding more and more things that fit, I started feeling a little sick to my stomach. And then I started to get a little scared. It took a lot of research to find the answers, and what I found was heartbreaking.
At a young age, our daughter Willa started talking about her other mother. She told us that she was seeing things. I would hear Willa move from her bedroom to maybe use the bathroom at night and hear her say, "Stop it!" She told me that these two little girls, literally, who were ghosts, were actually playing, going boo.
I don't think I ever felt that she was making it up to get attention. It wouldn't be the kind of attention that a child would want. These reports that she gave me of seeing ghosts, they were very disturbing to her.
And then as she got a little bit older, she started having memories. It was difficult for Willa because she couldn't block them out. She lost a lot of sleep. She was nervous. She was sometimes frightened.
For a mother to watch her child being petrified and abused, not by some child that I could have a talk with or an adult that I could have a conversation with, but something unseen. Who could we talk to about this? Are people going to think she's crazy?
We went to see a counselor at one point, but it was that period in Willa's life where she felt that she was totally different from other kids. She looked at the world differently from them. She felt that sometimes they were very young for her.
Willa was always sort of an odd kid out, and she has never really fit in.
I think she was very lonely.
It is very, very hard to be a parent and see that your child is different from all of the children around her and knows it. And it's also very hard to see that something is happening to her and there's nothing you can do to help.
Willa was around 8 or 9 years old when she first asked me about kids being sent out west. I asked her, "Oh, is this something you're studying in school?" And she said no.
She began asking questions mostly of Bill about orphans and about wagons and about orphans on wagons, children being sent places. You get one question and nothing for a while, and then another question, and then nothing for a while.
I became concerned. Well, I was at a loss. I simply didn't know what was going on.
She went through a phase when she was, in like 5th and 6th and 7th grade, where it was really kind of a dark period for her. She was withdrawn, she was angry, but it wasn't because she wasn't part of this popular group or couldn't do this particular activity. It was more like, where do I fit in this world where we have the living and the dead together? As a parent, I felt helpless. There was nothing that I could do. I might be her mother in this life, but that doesn't mean that I can help her with the other aspects to some other life. This is a time period where she had been dark and nervous and feeling like an outcast and not fitting in anywhere. So school was a place where Willa suffered a great deal. So it's ironic that it's also a place where she finally found answers. She came home and she was so excited. And she said, "I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy." And I said, What? And she said, "The orphan train, there was an orphan train." And she was putting it all together. She suddenly realized that some of the things that she had begun glimpsing had a basis in reality. It wasn't a dream, it wasn't craziness, and these were things that were beginning to come back to her. She actually said, I think I was on that train.
I became concerned. She seemed to be developing more and more memory of something that I wasn't sure existed.
Our daughter Willa came home and she was so excited. And she said, "I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy." The relief that she felt was so clear. I mean, she was so excited and so happy, which was unusual for her at the time. And she said, "Orphan train, there was an orphan train." She suddenly realized that some of the things that she had begun glimpsing had a basis in reality.
When you realize that your child has been walking through her life afraid, petrified that she is crazy, and you don't even realize that about her, it's heartbreaking.
When she first started asking about the orphan train, I just didn't know for sure what was going on.
At the time, I knew that the orphan train existed. Somewhere in some history lesson someplace, I knew that they had sent children out to be adopted. Beyond that, I really had no other information about it. She told us that in class they had talked about the orphan train as part of their history lesson. The orphan train was set up in the 1800s, middle 1800s, and it took children mostly from the East Coast, put them on trains, and sent them out.
This was a deliberate move to take orphans out of the major East Coast cities and send them out to the Midwest where they could be adopted or at least taken in by families. Some of the kids had wonderful lives when this happened. There were other kids working essentially as chattel slaves.
I didn't think about this as a past life until she began to say that herself. It's not that I didn't suspect, maybe, that there might be something there, but I don't think that I put it all together. It didn't come together until she actually said, I think I was on that train.
I really just didn't know what to make of it.
I didn't think she was making up a story. There's no reason for me not to believe her. She has come up with some descriptions of herself. A flowered dress, but the print isn't too big and it isn't too small. And she was young. She remembers looking up at the man and the woman that she thinks adopted her. She remembered something about the station and what it looked like. She's had memories of a very blonde boy who was also adopted at the same time she was, but he left in a wagon. He'd become her closest friend, almost like a brother to her, on this trip. And she thinks that that's the reason why she kept thinking about the orphan wagon. She remembered there were hills, low hills. She just started to open up. I think learning about the orphan train at school was a turning point for her. We did a little research and discovered there is actually an orphan train museum, and it's in Concordia, Kansas, where they have attempted to gather as many records as possible about the orphan train. We have arranged to have Willa do some research there to see if she can find out anything more concrete about that past life of hers.
I'm so excited that I'll actually be able to go to the Orphan Train Museum.
I think it would be a good thing for Willa to go out. She's really interested. She remembers the house that she was taken to, and she hopes that there might be a picture of that, and maybe even a picture of a kid that she recognizes.
I feel like I'm having a rare opportunity to go and see a tangible piece of my past, and we'll see if we can find anything really significant.
Our 4-year-old son, Luke, had memories of being a woman and dying in a fire. I felt like it was my responsibility to find something out that could help him. I first decided to do some research once Luke had given me a city, a name, and a means of death. I figured if there was some kind of a fire in Chicago and there were casualties, that there'd have to be some kind of a record. So I decided to do a little bit of research on the internet to see what I could find. The first thing that I found was all on the Great Chicago Fire, the Great Fire of Chicago. And I found out that there was one remaining structure from that fire, which was a water tower. I found a picture of it and I showed it to Luke. And I said, Luke, does this water tower mean anything to you? And he said, no. So I kind of just figured, that was a wrong lead. And I went back and I kept looking more. Well, I thought Pam, is a short name. So I searched Pamela, Chicago, and fire. And I actually got a hit. What I found was in March of 1993, there was a fire that was called the Paxton Hotel fire. The fire was massive, and when the fire department first arrived at the fire, they found people hanging outside of the windows and off of the roof of the building. They had to call in a specialist to identify the bodies. The original newspaper articles all stated that at least one woman had jumped to her death. And the woman was named Pamela.
And she found the details of who Luke may have been. I thought it was a possibility, but I didn't put too much weight on it.
So I took it a little further, and I researched the part of town that the funeral was listed, where the funeral home was, because I figured that was probably maybe where her hometown was. It was a place called Maywood, Illinois. As I read further on about Maywood, I figured out that it was a predominantly African-American part of town. I never even thought to ask Luke what color his skin was. Of course, he had told me many times that his hair was black, but I just, it didn't cross my mind. I don't know. I mean, it's hard enough to think of being another person, let alone like another sex, and then add another race to it. It just, I don't know why, it didn't cross my mind. So that night when I was putting Luke to bed, I casually said, "What color was Pam's skin?" And he said, "Black." Like he didn't even have to think about it. And I was like, oh, okay, another thing fits here. And it was really creeping me out that here I had a story that was lining up with everything that Luke had told me. When Nick got home that night, I was very hesitant to tell him, like, this is gonna really upset him, or I don't know how he's gonna take it, but I went ahead and told him. And his first reaction was, "You're crazy."
When she found the details of who Luke may have been, I kind of just blew it off. I didn't really think too much about the details.
I had to keep showing him how many things lined up. I'm like, every single thing that lines up. And compared with the fact that I had never asked him what her race was, that was kind of like the icing on my cake. I found a few pictures that I believe are of Pam, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and show them to Luke to see his reaction either way. I feel like showing Luke pictures of Pam would be able to put the pieces together for me. There always could be more evidence.
Showing pictures to Luke will, yeah, how do I feel about that? Oh. I kind of feel that nothing will happen. That's probably 99.9% likely that he will have no idea who that person is.
I don't know what he's gonna say.
My name is Willa, and I'm 18 years old. I first started having memories of the Orphan train when I was quite young. I do remember having the same dream over and over of the little boy. I'd remember me being a little girl in the dress. I'd remember getting off the train and seeing him taken away to another family. And I remember my family. And I even started remembering my name. I believe my name was Anna. This place looks almost exactly like where I remember getting off the train. This is gonna be very interesting. I want to learn as much about my past life as I can because it's still part of me. All of those memories, all of the things I did, all of those experiences, they're a part of who I am. Even if I don't find any definitive records of Anna, I'll still be able to just see the other children who were like me. And I really am ready.
Is there anything you want to tell me about your experience, your memories?
I remember a lot of the kids had already been adopted off the train, so I would have been in one of the later states, Kansas or Nebraska.
Okay.
I would be about 8 to 10 at most. And I believe my name was Anna.
This is a list of all the Annas that we have files on.
Okay.
And if there's any names that jump out at you at all.
It had an R somewhere in it. Can we look at her? Anna Ruth.
Okay. Let me see if I have a file here on her.
It could have been Anna Reed too, but there's an R.
Okay. So I was able to find limited information here. Anna Reed, all we have is that she was placed in Kansas. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any pictures in here. But there is limited information about Anna in this file, if you'd like to go through that.
All right. I wasn't able to pinpoint exactly which Anna I was. I mean, there's a lot of missing files.
I can make up a list for you of the towns they stopped in Kansas, and we can start researching the newspapers during those time periods to see if there's any names you jump out at you.
I think I'm much closer to finding my Anna. Seeing everything, seeing the suitcases, the dresses, the pictures, the trains, it brought everything from a memory to the very front of my mind.
I have real places to start now. I have the orphanage, I have the general area, the general time, and I think with that, I have enough of a starting point so that I can go out there and find my Anna.
A few months ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and obviously I'm now in the process of being treated for that with chemotherapy after surgery. After 17 years of being clear of cancer, to be diagnosed with breast cancer again really just knocked me flat. When I was diagnosed with cancer 17 years ago, all I could think about was that I was going to die. But I don't think about it the same way anymore. I don't think it's the end, because it's not the end. I have a child who was found by her previous mother. What it makes me realize is that you don't lose contact with the people you love. I believe that you can continue to find those people who have been important to you over the course of your life in another lifetime and another lifetime and another lifetime. It's not nearly as frightening to me as the first time around.
Contrary to what a lot of people would say, I don't think you can prove there is or there isn't continuation. But just that thought that the family can go on even after death, it makes you feel good.
The prognosis is very good for her, but I have this feeling that if something were to happen, that I wouldn't really lose her. She'd still be there, even if it wasn't in a physical state.
From the time that my son Luke was 2 years old, he remembered being a woman named Pam who died in a fire. Once I had identified Pam as a real person who actually died in a fire, I didn't really know what to do with that information. I found a few pictures that I believe are of Pam, and I think that I'm going to go ahead and show them to Luke to see his reaction either way. Whether or not we have the right Pam, if there is a Pam, it still leaves me with a lot of questions as to who Pam was and what happened, I feel like knowing for myself would let me help him with these bad memories that he actually does have. You want to look at these pictures?
Yeah.
Do you know who any of those people are? When we were looking at the pictures, I knew which one was Pam. The rest of the images were not Pam. If you think you know any of those people, or if any of those people look familiar.
What's familiar mean?
Like you know them from somewhere.
You've seen him before.
You know what? I know someone I can recognize. Pam.
He looked right at the correct picture. He said he recognized that one and that he remembered it being taken.
But it was the other time.
It was the other time?
Yeah.
It was pretty powerful that he picked out the picture. Can't really explain it. Don't really know. Kind of bewildered. I don't really know what to think. I guess it does make me, strengthen the possibility that maybe we found the right Pam.
We'll go upstairs and play. I love you, okay?
Upstairs and play?
Yeah, I love you. It's important to me that Luke understands that he doesn't have to worry about fires around every corner or, dangerous things. He does have another chance now as Luke. I feel like I'll be able to help him more with his questions in the future, knowing that I know what happened now, and it's not just something that he has to deal with alone.